The folder slipped from Nadia's hands the moment the door swung open. She had the wrong room. She knew it before she even stepped inside. The number on her printed confirmation said 4B, and the door in front of her said 4B, and somehow both of those things were lies, because the room in front of her was not a city budget review session. There was no projector, no folding chairs with bad cushions, no bored municipal employees eating pastries from a cardboard box. There were 4 men sitting around a long mahogany table, and every single one of them went completely still the moment they saw her. Nadia did not scream. She did not drop her laptop bag. She stood in the doorway with her coffee cup that said World's Okayest Auditor and looked at the table, and the folder that had slipped from her fingers landed flat on the floor with a sound like a single clap. Papers everywhere. Her papers. Her beautiful, color-coded, meticulously sorted budget papers. "My papers," she said, and then she pressed her lips together, because that was possibly the most unhelpful thing she had ever said in her life. The man at the head of the table looked at her, not the way the other 3 looked at her, not with alarm, not with the kind of rapid assessment that made the back of her neck prickle. He looked at her the way someone looks at a thing they have not decided the category of yet. He was not a small man. He had the kind of stillness that large, confident people develop over years of not needing to fill silence with noise. Dark hair, a suit that did not come off a rack, hands resting flat on the table in a way that was either very calm or very controlled, and she could not tell which. "Wrong floor," he said. His voice was even, not unkind, not warm either, just level, the way a horizon is level. Nadia bent down and started collecting her papers. Her hands were steady. She had learned, a long time ago, to keep her hands steady. "Wrong building, actually," she said, straightening up. "And it is Ms. Okafor." One of the other men shifted in his seat. The man at the head of the table did not move. "Ms. Okafor," he repeated. "The city budget office is on Clement Street." "I appear to be on Clement Avenue." She tucked the folder under her arm. "An easy mistake. Apologies for the interruption." She saw it then, on the corner of the table, just at the edge of her peripheral vision. She did not look at it directly. She had learned that too, to see things without appearing to see them. She pulled the door closed behind her. The hallway was empty. Beige carpet, a fire extinguisher on the wall, the distant sound of an elevator cable somewhere in the building. Nadia walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. Her heartbeat was slightly elevated. That was allowed. That was a reasonable biological response to a situation like this one. She breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth, the way her therapist had taught her, the way she had been doing since she was 19 years old, and learned that controlled breathing is what separates a person who survives a bad situation from a person who doesn't. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in. Behind her, through the door she had just closed, she heard the man's voice, not raised, not sharp, simply carrying in the way that voices carry when the person speaking has never had to raise them to be heard. "I don't want her," he said. "I never did." She did not know what he meant. She pressed the lobby button and watched the doors close. She found out later that his name was Dante Esposito. She found out the way everyone finds out things they would rather not know, slowly, then all at once. 3 weeks after the wrong room, a job offer arrived in her email. A private consulting firm called Meridian Advisory Group. The salary was more than she had made in the previous 2 years combined. The email was polished, professional, the kind of careful corporate language that had been reviewed by at least 3 people before it was sent. They had seen her work, they said. They were impressed by her background in forensic accounting. They were particularly interested in her discretion. That word, discretion. Nadia sat with the email for 2 days before she accepted. She told herself she accepted because the salary made sense, because her sister's medical bills were still a weight she carried into every financial decision she made, because the city budget office paid her barely enough to keep her apartment in a building where the heat worked only intermittently, and she was tired of being cold. All of those things were true. She started at Meridian on a Monday. Her supervisor was a man named Gary Cole. Thin, efficient, always slightly preoccupied. The kind of manager who conveyed approval by not finding anything to criticize. He gave her a stack of client files on her first day and told her she would be reviewing financial records for a portfolio of property development companies. The work was real. The numbers were real. The discrepancies she found, in the third week, in a set of quarterly reports for a company called Harlow Developments, those were real too. She flagged them, internally, sent the summary to Gary with a note that said the figures did not reconcile, and she wanted to understand why before moving forward. Gary said he would look into it. She waited a week. Gary said the figures had been reviewed and were correct. Nadia pulled the files again. Read them again. Made her own notes in a separate document she saved on her personal laptop, not the work one. She did this not because she had decided anything, but because she had learned, a long time ago, that there are two kinds of things in the world: things you can afford to forget, and things you cannot. She was not sure yet which kind this was, but she kept the file. On a Thursday in her 5th week at Meridian, she stayed late. The office emptied out. Gary left at 6, then the junior analysts, then the woman from accounts who always ate her lunch at her desk and left precisely at 6:15. Nadia sat at her desk and worked until 7:30, and on her way out, she passed the small glass-walled conference room at the end of the hall. The light was on. 2 men were inside. She did not recognize either of them. They were looking at something on a tablet, and as she passed, one of them tilted his head and said something she couldn't hear through the glass, and the other one nodded. She went home. She cooked rice and lentils and ate at her kitchen table with the Harlow Developments file open beside her bowl. The numbers sat on the page and did not explain themselves. That was the thing about numbers. They never lied, but they were very good at staying silent. Her phone rang at 9:15. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She answered. Ms. Okafor. The voice was level. Even. The kind of voice that does not need to fill silence. She knew it immediately. Mr. Esposito, she said. Her voice was steady. She was good at that. A pause. Not an uncomfortable one. The kind of pause a person makes when they are slightly surprised and are deciding whether to acknowledge it. You know who I am, he said. I know who a lot of people are, she said. It is part of my job. What else is part of your job? She looked at the file on the table. Right now, finishing my dinner. He said nothing for a moment then. Gary Cole sent me your flag. The Harlow figures. Gary told me the figures were correct. Gary tells people what they need to hear. Another pause. The figures were not correct. You found something you were not supposed to find. She put her fork down. I find things I am not supposed to find on a fairly regular basis, Mr. Esposito. It is what forensic accountants do. I know. He said it with something that was not quite admiration and not quite warning. Somewhere in the middle. That is why you are there. She understood then. Not everything, not all at once, but enough to know that the salary and the polished email and Gary Cole's careful non-answers were all part of the same architecture, that she had been placed somewhere deliberately, that the wrong room 3 weeks ago had not been the end of something but the beginning. She should have been frightened. She was, a little, but underneath that, quieter, more familiar, was something else. Something that had been with her since she was 19 years old and sitting in a hospital waiting room and understanding for the first time that the people who were supposed to protect her sister had decided it was not worth their time. She picked up her fork. Then perhaps, she said, we should have an honest conversation about what I am actually being paid to do. He said nothing. The line stayed open. Outside her window, the city went on doing what cities do. Noise and light and the sound of someone's television through a thin wall. Inside the apartment, the Harlow Developments file sat beside her half-eaten dinner, full of numbers that did not reconcile. Nadia Okafor had spent the last 9 years building a very specific skill. She could look at a set of numbers and see not just what they said, but what they were hiding. She could find the space between what was recorded and what actually happened, and she could trace that space back to its source, with the patience of someone who has no interest in being rushed. She had used that skill for the city. She had used it for a private law firm before that. She had used it once, quietly and unofficially, to help a federal investigator who had asked her a favor and then pretended he hadn't. She had never used it like this, inside something she did not fully understand yet, inside a structure where Gary Cole took her flags and made them disappear, and 2 men she didn't recognize stood in glass conference rooms at 7 in the evening looking at things on tablets. But she had the file. She had the notes. She had her personal laptop and a very good memory, and the particular kind of calm that comes not from safety, but from having decided, a long time ago, that fear was only useful if it made you careful. The line was still open. "Mr. Esposito," she said. "Yes. I will need full access to the Harlow filing history. All of it, not the version Gary has, the original." A pause. "That is a significant request. You hired a forensic accountant," she said. "Let her account." She heard something on the other end of the line that was not quite a sound. Not a laugh. Something smaller than that. Something that happened almost by accident. "I will have it sent to you by morning," he said. "Good. Ms. Okafor." "Yes. The figures you found in the Harlow file. The discrepancy." He paused. How long had it been there? She had already done that math. She had done it the first night, at this same table, with the same rice going cold. 4 years, she said. Possibly longer, depending on what the originals show. Another pause. Longer this time. "Go finish your dinner," he said. And the line went dead. Nadia looked at the phone in her hand for a moment. Then she looked at the file. Then she looked at the rice, which was now completely cold. She got up and put the kettle on instead. The original Harlow files arrived in her secure work inbox at 6:17 the next morning. She was already at her kitchen table when they came through. She had not slept especially well, but that was nothing new. She opened the files with her second cup of tea and began. What she found, over the course of the next 4 hours, was not a mistake. It was a trail. Deliberate, careful, almost elegant. The kind of trail that takes years to build. The kind that is designed to be invisible unless you know exactly what you are looking for, and even then it takes someone with a very particular kind of patience to follow it to the end. She knew what she was looking for. She had been looking for something exactly like this for 4 years, since the investigation that went nowhere, since the man who walked free, since her sister came home from the hospital and never quite looked at the world the same way again. She closed the files. She sat very still for a long moment. Then she opened a new document on her personal laptop and began to write. The kettle had long since gone cold. The morning light came through the kitchen window at a low angle and fell across the table and the papers and the cup she had forgotten to drink from. And Nadia Okafor wrote, line by line, the beginning of something she did not have a name for yet. She did not flag it. She did not send it to Gary. She saved it, backed it up, encrypted it, and then she went to work. Nadia had learned, growing up, that the people who got through difficult things were not always the strongest ones. They were the most observant, the ones who noticed which floor creaked and which door swung silently, and where the exits were in any room, before they let themselves sit down. She noticed everything. So when the gray sedan appeared behind her on her Tuesday commute, she clocked it on the third day without letting her stride change, or her eyes linger. 2 men, same car, always 2 blocks back, patient, the way someone is patient when they have been told to watch and not to act. She was not naive enough to think Dante had sent them to protect her. She was not naive enough to think he hadn't either. On Friday evening, she walked home a different route, through the indoor market on Preble Street, past the bookshop on the corner, through the side entrance of the library and out the front. The gray sedan was not behind her, but a man she had never seen before held the library door open for her on the way out. He smiled. She smiled back. She went home, sat at her kitchen table, and called the number. It rang twice. "The gray sedan," she said when he picked up. A pause. "Precautionary," he said. "For whose benefit?" He did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. "There are people," he said, "who have drawn conclusions about your association with me. Conclusions that are not correct, but that make you a variable in a situation I am managing." "A variable," she said. "A person of interest to individuals who would use that interest against me." She looked at the kitchen wall. There was a small crack in the plaster near the corner, one she had been meaning to report to the building manager for 3 months. "So I am leverage," she said. "You were leverage the moment you walked into that room." She thought about that. The wrong room. The folder hitting the floor. His voice, even and flat, saying, "I don't want her. I never did." What are you going to do about it? She asked. What I always do, he said. Manage it. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have right now. She looked at the crack in the plaster. I found something in the Harlow files, she said. Something that is not about your organization. Silence. Something older, she said. A structure that has been running through multiple shell companies across at least 3 states. It is using your financial architecture as a host, the way a parasite uses a body. It has been there for years, possibly before you were in the position you are currently in. The silence on the other end of the line changed character. It became very still. Send me what you have, he said. No, she said. A pause. Ms. Okafor. I will show you what I have, she said. In person, at a time and place I choose. And in exchange, I want 2 things. She heard him breathe. Just once. Name them, he said. Full access. No Gary, no filters. Whatever I ask to see, I see. And the second? She looked at the crack in the wall, at the folder on the table, at 9 years of being careful and patient, and waiting for the right moment with the particular kind of discipline that no one teaches you because no one expects you to need it this long. When this is over, she said, the name I give you, one name, you take care of it. The silence this time was different again. She had given him something he had not expected, not a request that came from fear or greed or confusion, a request that came from somewhere else entirely, somewhere he recognized. That is a considerable ask, he said. I know what I found in those files, she said. It is a considerable offer. He said nothing. She waited. Tuesday, he said. 11 in the morning. I will send you an address. I will find the correct building this time, she said. Another almost sound. That small accidental thing. The line went dead. Nadia put the phone face down on the table. She looked at the wall. She looked at the folder. She looked at the crack in the plaster that she had been meaning to report for 3 months, and decided that she would report it tomorrow. She had work to do tonight. The address he sent was a restaurant that had not opened yet, chairs still upside down on the tables, the smell of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. A man at the door who looked at her for a long moment before stepping aside. Dante was already there, sitting at a table near the back that had been set upright and laid with 2 cups of coffee. He looked exactly as she remembered from the wrong room. The stillness, the suit, the particular quality of his attention when he chose to direct it. He stood when she walked in. She had not expected that. She sat down across from him, opened her bag, and placed the folder on the table between them. He looked at it, then at her. Before I open that, he said, I want to know something. Ask. The wrong room. 3 weeks before you started at Meridian. He watched her face. Was that an accident? She picked up the coffee cup. What do you think? I think, he said slowly, that a forensic accountant who finds the wrong room by confusing an avenue and a street, and who 3 weeks later accepts a job with a firm connected to the man sitting in that room, I think that is either a very large coincidence or a very careful person. She set the cup down. I found the room first, she said. Then I found out who was in it. Then I found out about Meridian. It took me 4 days. She looked at him steadily. I accepted the job because I needed to be inside something I could see clearly. You gave me that access. You did not know you were doing it, but you did. He was quiet for a moment. You were already looking for the trail, he said. I have been looking for it for 4 years. He looked at the folder. Open it, she said. He did. She watched his face as he read. He was very good at keeping his face still, but she was very good at reading the things that move underneath stillness. The slight change in the set of his jaw, the moment where his eyes stopped and went back, the place where he turned a page more carefully than he had turned the ones before it. He read for 11 minutes. She counted. Then he closed the folder. This runs through 4 of my companies, he said. 5. The 5th one is newer. It is in the appendix. He opened the folder again, found the appendix, closed it again. This is not mine, he said. I know. I need you to understand that. Mr. Esposito, she met his eyes. I am a forensic accountant. I do not make assumptions based on proximity. I follow evidence. The evidence tells me that someone has been using the bones of your financial structure to move money through channels that you did not build, and probably did not know existed. She paused. What that money has been funding is in the last 3 pages. He opened to the last 3 pages. She watched his face change. Not dramatically, not the way faces change in films, all wide eyes and sudden movement. Just a small, precise tightening around the eyes. A stillness that became a different kind of stillness. He closed the folder. The name you want, he said, is on the last page. 3rd line. He did not open it again. He already knew the page. He had a very good memory. She could tell. I will handle the access, he said. No Gary, no filters. And the name. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes that she could not fully categorize. Not the calculation she had expected. Something less comfortable than calculation. The name, he said, will be handled. She nodded. They sat for a moment in the empty restaurant that smelled of fresh paint, with 2 cups of coffee between them and a folder full of 4 years of her life on the table. Ms. Okafor, he said. Nadia, she said. She was not sure why. It came out before she had decided to say it. He looked at her for just a moment too long. Nadia, he said, like he was checking the weight of it. Then he stood, picked up the folder, and walked to the door. The man who had let her in held it open. Dante paused without turning around. The gray sedan will stay, he said, until this is resolved. I know, she said. He left. She sat in the empty restaurant and finished her coffee, which was excellent, far better than anything she had at her desk at Meridian, and looked at the chairs still upside down on all the other tables, and thought about the trail in the files, and about the name on the 3rd line of the last page, and about the fact that for the first time in 4 years, she did not feel like she was standing alone in a dark room looking for a light switch. That feeling scared her more than the gray sedan. She finished the coffee, went back to work. The charity gala was held at the Aldermere Hotel, a building that had been beautiful in 1930 and had been trading on that fact ever since. Grand staircases, high ceilings with elaborate plasterwork, the kind of chandeliers that make ordinary people feel like they are in a film and make very wealthy people feel like they are at home. Nadia arrived in her capacity as a financial staff member for the Esposito Foundation's charitable division, which donated substantially to the children's medical wing at St. Clair's Hospital. She wore a dark blue dress that she had bought 3 years ago for a different occasion and had not worn since. She carried a folder with the funding reconciliation she had been asked to review. She was there to work. She intended to work. The room was full of people who moved with the particular ease of those who have been attending events like this their whole lives. Nadia moved differently, with the precision of someone who has mapped every exit before she let herself cross the room. She found the foundation's table near the east wall, settled in with the quarterly reports, and began. An hour later, she was halfway through the children's wing discrepancy, a figure that did not match across 2 separate donation records, when a shadow fell across her papers. She looked up. Dante was standing at the edge of her table. He was the only person in the room who looked exactly as he looked everywhere else. Same stillness, same suit, the noise of the event happening entirely around him, not touching him. The children's wing figures, he said without preamble. The October donation is recorded twice, she said, once under the foundation and once under a personal gift. They should not both be in the annual total. He looked at the paper she was pointing to, leaned slightly forward to see it better. He was close enough that she could have said something unnecessary about the quality of his presence in a room. She did not say it. Double counted, he said. Yes, I will flag it for correction. It is not significant in dollar terms, but it will matter for the audit. He straightened. You came to a charity gala, he said, to reconcile a rounding error. I came to do my job, she said. Something moved at the corner of his mouth, not a smile, the idea of one. I noticed, he said. She looked back at her papers. He stayed where he was for a moment, just a moment, and then someone called his name from across the room and he moved away without a word. 30 seconds, maybe less. But there was a photographer near the east wall that evening, hired by a society column that covered these events. And photographers, even those hired for polite society coverage, take many more pictures than they use. One of those pictures, a man leaning over a woman's shoulder, her looking at papers, him looking at the same papers, made its way, through a chain of people and motivations that Nadia would not fully understand until later, to a different audience entirely. By morning, she had the gray sedan plus one additional vehicle, a black car, different rotation, more careful, not Dante's. She noticed the change on her Tuesday commute. She noticed the shift in their technique, tighter, closer, less patient than the first team. The first team had been watching. This one was measuring distance. She changed her route that night, took 3 different buses, sat in a cafe for 40 minutes, walked the last 8 blocks in a direction that added 15 minutes to her trip. She got home at 9:45. She sat at the kitchen table and looked at the documents she had been building for the past 5 weeks, the trail, the names, the structure of the thing hiding inside the thing she had been hired to review. Her personal laptop was open, the encrypted file was open. She typed for 2 hours. Then she picked up her phone and called the number. He answered on the second ring. "I think," she said, "that someone saw us talking at the gala." A pause. "Yes," he said. They drew a conclusion. "Yes." An incorrect one. He was quiet for a moment. Not entirely. She stopped. The kitchen was very quiet. "Mr. Esposito." "Dante," he said. It came out with the same quality as when she had said her own name, like he was checking something. She sat with that for a moment. "Dante," she said, "what did you tell them?" "What I always tell people when they ask questions about things that are not their business. Which is, that I don't want you, that I never did." She looked at the crack in the plaster on the kitchen wall. She had still not reported it. "They did not believe you," she said. "No. So I am still leverage." "You are more than leverage now," he said. "You have information that is dangerous to more than one entity. That makes you relevant to people I would prefer you to be invisible to. Then make me invisible." "I am trying." "Try faster," she said. "There is a second vehicle. A black car. The rotation changes every 3 hours. They are not yours." Silence. Long this time. "Are you sure?" "I have been documenting them for 4 days," she said. "I have license plates, descriptions, and a timeline. I can send it to you." He exhaled. "Just once." "Send it," he said. She sent it while he was still on the line. "Nadia." His voice had changed slightly, not softer, more careful, like he was holding something very precisely. "Yes. Do not vary your home route. Do not change your schedule. I need them to believe that you don't know." "I have not changed my schedule," she said. "I documented them without changing my schedule. Tonight I took 3 buses and walked for 15 minutes. I will not do that again." A pause. "You took 3 buses." "I needed to know how close they would come if I moved unexpectedly." She paused. "They maintain distance. They are not ready to move yet. They are still watching." Silence. "How long have you been doing this?" he said. "Paying attention?" she said. "Since I was 19. He did not ask what happened when she was 19. She appreciated that. "I will handle the second vehicle," he said. "Keep sending me the documentation." "I will." "And Nadia." "Yes. Do not open your door to anyone you have not confirmed with me first." She looked at the kitchen wall, the crack in the plaster, the folder on the table, the laptop screen with the encrypted file still open. "I was not planning to," she said. She ended the call and sat in the quiet for a long moment. Then she got up, checked the locks on the front door and the window, came back to the table, and kept working. The encrypted file grew by 11 pages that night. She backed it up to 3 separate places, the way she always did. Then she made tea, which she also did not drink, and sat in the kitchen of her apartment with the low-level hum of the city coming through the walls, and the particular kind of focused calm that she had built, over years, from necessity. She was not frightened. She was close to something. She could feel it the way you feel a storm before the weather changes, not the rain yet, but the pressure shift in the air. The thing she had been building toward for 4 years was getting close enough to touch, and the fact that it had arrived, wrapped in something unexpected, through a door she had walked through by accident, did not make it less real. What she had not anticipated was the man. She was honest with herself about that. Alone in the kitchen at midnight, she had anticipated complication and danger and the need for leverage. She had not anticipated someone who stood when she walked into a room and said her name like he was checking the weight of it. She pushed that thought aside. She had work to do. She kept working. The night Nadia pulled Dante Esposito out of a direct line of fire, she was carrying a folder and wearing flat shoes. And the thing she thought about most clearly in the 3 seconds before she grabbed his arm and moved was that she really hoped she was right about the angle. She had done the math 6 times. She had been doing the math for 11 days, since she found the point in the financial records where the internal information leak began. Not a person at first, just a pattern, a timing irregularity. Certain meetings, certain arrangements, certain locations appeared in the books 2 to 3 days after they had been decided internally, and before they had been communicated externally. That gap was the leak, small enough to miss if you were not looking for it. She had been looking for it. She had found the source on a Thursday evening, cross-referencing communication logs against transaction timestamps, and then she had sat with that knowledge for 3 more days before she decided what to do with it. She did not call Dante. She did not call Renzo, his lieutenant, who had left 2 messages for her in the past week, asking for a progress update on the Harlow supplementals. She kept working. She built the full picture. She needed the full picture before she moved, because partial pictures were how people got hurt, and she was not in the business of partial pictures. On the 11th day, she had everything. She also knew about the dinner. It was in the records, a venue, a time, an arrangement that had been logged through the compromised channel. She had seen it at 2 in the morning, sitting at her kitchen table with her 3rd cup of tea, and she had understood immediately what it meant. She understood that she had about 18 hours. She did not sleep. She organized everything she had built into a clean, printable document. She printed it. She put it in a folder. She dressed carefully. Flat shoes because she did not know yet what the evening would require. And she went to the Aldermere Hotel, the same one where the photographer had taken the picture that had complicated her life, because that was where the dinner was, and because the records she had showed the leak had placed the details of this dinner with people who did not wish Dante well. She walked in through the side entrance, a staff door she had noted during the gala and stored in the part of her memory reserved for exits. The dinner was on the 3rd floor. She took the stairs. She found him in the corridor outside the private dining room, speaking briefly with a man she did not recognize. Tie loosened slightly, the kind of end-of-evening manner that meant he had been there for several hours already. He saw her. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted, not surprise exactly, more like recalibration. She walked directly to him, which required passing the man he was speaking with, who moved aside, barely. "I need a moment," she said. "I'm in the middle of—" "Now," she said, "please." Something in her face must have communicated what her voice had not, because he turned to the man beside him, said something brief, and then walked 3 steps away from the dining room door. She kept her voice low. "The meeting that took place here tonight is concluded. The location was compromised before it happened. The same channel I have been tracking for 11 days. She held the folder out to him. "I know who it is. I know the full chain. And I know that there are people in this building right now who are not here for dinner." He went very still. "Where?" he said. She had done the math on angles. The corridor had 3 exposure points, the main staircase at the north end, the service lift at the south, and a window at the east turn of the hall that faced the roof of the adjacent building. She had noted the adjacent building when she came in. 4 stories, flat roof, a line of sight that would be very clean if you were standing at the right point. She had done the math 6 times. "East turn," she said. "Move, now." She did not wait for him to decide. She put her hand on his arm, the first time she had ever touched him, and moved left, toward the interior wall, away from the east-facing window. The sound that came from the east turn of the corridor was small. It was not an explosion. It was not dramatic. It was one sharp sound and then the noise of something hitting the floor, and by that point they were both against the interior wall with a load-bearing column between them and the window. And she was breathing hard, not from exertion, but from the sudden drop in adrenaline that happens when a risk you calculated turns out to be real. She had hoped she was wrong. She had been right. Dante was standing very close to her. The column was to his left. She was to his right. His hand had closed around her elbow at some point in the past 20 seconds, and she was not sure when. She could hear his breathing, even, controlled. The breathing of someone who has been in dangerous situations before and knows how to stay functional inside them. "The folder," he said. He was looking at the east corridor. She had not dropped it. "I have it," she said. "How long have you known about the source?" 11 days. He turned his head and looked at her. From this distance, she could see that his eyes were a shade of brown that was nearly black, and that the thing behind them was not anger, and was not surprise, and was something she did not have a simple name for. "You did not tell me," he said. "I needed the complete picture first." She held his gaze. "I have it now." His hand was still on her elbow. She did not think he had noticed. Down the corridor she could hear movement, his people, several of them, the professional organized response of individuals who had trained for exactly this kind of situation, moving with purpose through the building. "There is a name in the folder," she said, "on the second page, top of the list." He looked at her for another moment. Then he looked at the folder in her hand. "I trusted that person for 8 years," he said. It was not a statement that invited response. It was the kind of thing a person says out loud because saying it out loud makes it real in a way that knowing it internally does not. She said nothing. She understood that kind of knowledge. The kind that lives in you for a long time before it becomes a sentence you can speak. Renzo appeared at the far end of the corridor, moving fast. 2 other men with him. He stopped when he saw them. Took in the scene, the column, the east window, the folder, the distance or lack of it between them, and his expression shifted through several things in quick succession, before settling into something carefully neutral. "Boss," he said. Dante stepped back. "Not far. Enough. Secure the roof access on the east side," he said. "And I need a car." Renzo looked at Nadia. "Her too," Dante said. It was not a question. Renzo nodded and moved. Nadia looked down at the folder in her hands. The work of 11 days. The things she had built carefully, one piece at a time, in her kitchen at midnight, and on lunch breaks, and in the margins of everything else she was doing. The complete picture. She had not done it for him. She had done it because the trail in the Harlow files led here, to this building, to this night, and she had been following that trail for 4 years before she ever walked into the wrong room. She had not done it for him. But she handed him the folder, and he took it, and for a moment, their hands were on the same thing, and she did not move immediately. "The name on the 3rd page," she said. "The one I asked you about in the restaurant." He looked at her. "Is it still on the list?" she said. "It was never off the list," he said. She let go of the folder. They walked to the car. The documents that Nadia Okafor had spent 4 years building and 11 concentrated days finalizing did what documents built with that kind of patience always do. They moved, quietly and precisely, through channels that the people named in them did not know existed, and they did not stop moving until everything had found its place. It took 6 weeks. She knew this because she watched it happen, from the inside of a situation she had not entirely planned but had, in some ways, been preparing for since she was 19 years old, and sitting in a hospital corridor deciding what kind of person she was going to be. The network that had been running through the bones of the Esposito financial structure was dismantled with the same precision it had been built with, except faster, because the people taking it apart had the advantage of knowing exactly where to look. 3 federal investigations that had stalled for years moved forward simultaneously. 2 organizations that had been protected by the people named in Nadia's documents were no longer protected. The name on the 3rd page of the last section, the one she had asked for, the one she had built toward for 4 years, was among them. She did not watch that part closely. She did not need to. She knew it was done the way you know, when a sound you have been living with for a very long time finally stops. Not because someone announces the silence, because the pressure in the air changes, and you can breathe differently than you could before. Her sister called her on a Wednesday evening, which was unusual. Her sister called on Sundays, reliably, at noon, because they had made that arrangement 4 years ago and both of them kept it. "Something happened," her sister said. "Something I've been waiting for." "I know," Nadia said. A pause. How do you know? Nadia looked at the kitchen wall. The crack in the plaster near the corner had been repaired 2 weeks ago. She had finally reported it. Because I was looking for it, she said. Her sister did not ask more than that. They had spent 4 years learning to speak in exactly the amount of words that the other person needed and no more. It was one of the things they had built, together, from what they had. She was offered witness protection the following week. 2 agents, very polite, a gray building, a cup of coffee she did not touch. She declined. She was offered a consulting position, not through Meridian, not through Gary, not through any of the layers she had spent 6 weeks watching become irrelevant. A direct offer, through a lawyer she had not met before, and a contract that described her role in terms that were very careful and not entirely specific. She was still thinking about it when Dante came to her apartment. He knocked. He waited. He did not try the door. She opened it. He was in a different suit than she had seen him in before. Not the formal kind, something slightly quieter. He looked, for the first time since the wrong room, like a person who was not managing a particular situation, like someone who had temporarily put that down. She stepped back and let him in. He stood in her kitchen and looked at it the way he always seemed to look at new spaces, taking an inventory, sorting it into the correct category, settling once he had done that. She put the kettle on. He sat at the kitchen table. He saw the contract on the table, open at the first page, and he looked at it and did not say anything. She got 2 cups from the shelf and set them on the counter. The contract, she said. Did you approve the terms? The terms are yours, to approve or reject, he said. I set the parameters. The specifics are your call. She looked at the kettle. You set the parameters, she said. I said I wanted someone with full access, no filters, someone whose judgment I trust. He paused. The contract is the structure of that. She thought about Gary, who had made her flags disappear. About the wrong room. About the gray sedan and the black car, and 11 days at the kitchen table, and 1 corridor in the Aldermere Hotel, and the particular feeling of his hand on her elbow, which she had been very deliberately not thinking about. The kettle boiled. She poured the water. There is a second thing, he said. She turned around. He was looking at the table, not at her. The contract, the cup she had not yet brought over, the small plain surface of the kitchen. He was sitting the way he always sat, with that stillness, that particular economy of posture. But there was something underneath it that she had not seen there before. Something he was not managing. I said something, he said, in a room, 3.5 months ago, in front of people who were listening. He paused. I have said it more than once since then, in other rooms, to people who asked questions I did not want them asking. She put both cups on the table and sat down across from him. He looked at her then. I was wrong, he said. Both times. All the times. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, the city went on the way cities do. The repaired wall was smooth and even. The contract sat between them on the table, first page open, the rest of it unread. She looked at him for a long moment. She thought about 19 and the hospital corridor and the decision she had made about what kind of person she was going to be. She thought about 4 years and the trail and the name and the silence that had replaced the pressure in her chest. She thought about 11 days at this table and 1 sentence she had said in a restaurant. Not planned, not decided, just said. And the way he had looked at the word after she offered it. She picked up her cup. I know, she said. He looked at her. Something in his expression moved, very slightly, in the way that things move when they have been held very still for a very long time and finally don't have to be anymore. She looked at the contract. The terms, she said. I have questions about Section 3. He looked at the contract. Ask them, he said. She asked. He answered. They moved through it, section by section, the way 2 precise people work through a document, when both of them are paying careful attention, which is to say thoroughly, and without rushing, with the particular quality of attention that means something other than just the work in front of them. The tea went cold. Neither of them noticed. The contract stayed on the table, unsigned, when the questions ran out and the conversation moved somewhere else. Not directed, not planned, just moved. The way conversations move when the people having them have stopped performing and started talking. Outside, the evening came on. Inside the kitchen, two people sat at a small table in a repaired apartment, and the city went on around them, and nothing was resolved in the way that films resolve things, neatly, with a clear ending point and music underneath. It opened. The way a door opens when someone finally decides to stop holding it closed, not dramatically, not all at once. Just a shift, just a change in what the space between two people is able to hold. The contract could wait. She was not going anywhere. Neither was he.